My name is Zach Hips, and you're watching Bite Sized. My wife and I love eating fresh vegetables. Since we don't have a large backyard to grow a garden, we're limited to using planter boxes on our back patio. In this video, I'm going to show you how I built this planter box on the right. I started out by cutting a 2x4 into 4 equal lengths. These will be the legs of the planter box. After the 4 legs were cut, I went ahead and cut the 4 pieces that connect the legs together into a rectangle. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what type of joinery to use to connect the legs together. I wanted something simple and quick, so I decided on drilling some holes and using dowels. Since I didn't have clamps long enough, I used a ratchet strap to apply pressure from both sides. If I could do this again, I'd use mortise and tenon joints to join these pieces together. The next day, after the glue had time to dry, I removed my makeshift clamps and moved on to the 1x8 siding. I measured all the pieces and cut them out. Last time I built the planter box, I used screws, but this time I used a nail gun with 16 gauge nails to attach the siding. This is another example of my lazy joinery. These shorter pieces aren't even attached to the 4 legs. Again, if I had to do this over, I would use mortise and tenon joints. I had to use a circular saw to trim off some of the longer side pieces. I forgot that 1x8 boards are not actually 8 inches wide, so when it came time for assembly, I realized the legs were too tall. This meant I had to use the circular saw again to trim them to length. I happen to have some 3/8 inch plywood left over from the last time I built the planter box. I used the same sheet again for the bottom. I marked the corners where a rectangular notch needed to be cut out to accommodate the legs. Then I set both pieces in place and marked a straight line where they met so I could cut it to length. After refilling my nail gun, I secured the bottom into place. At this point, the planter box is pretty much functional, but it's not going to win any beauty pageants. I took some 1x4 lumber and cut some trim pieces for all 4 corners. I ran them through the table saw at 45 degrees to give them a mitered edge. Using glue and the nail gun, I attached all 8 pieces. As a last-minute idea, I used the 45-degree cutoff pieces to fill in these spaces. I think it gives the planter box some more depth and looks pretty nice. The last piece of trim I wanted to put on was a border around the top. I used the rest of my 1x4 material, cut some mitered corners, and attached them to the top with more glue and nails. Here is what the planter box looked like at this point. The water needs to be able to drain somewhere, so I drilled some holes through the bottom plywood. Some of you may have been asking why I'm not using pressure-treated lumber. After all, this planter box will be outside in the elements. I probably should use pressure-treated lumber if I want this thing to last a long time. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to stain the planter box, and I figured that the stain would give it at least some protection. I realized at this point that the stain was much darker than I thought it was going to be, but there was no turning back at this point. I knew that it would lighten up a little when it fully dried. Next time, I should test out the color on a scrap piece before committing to staining the whole workpiece. After giving the stain plenty of time to dry, I enlisted the help of my nephew, who was also named Zack, to help me carry the planter box to my back patio. This project was a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be, and I really enjoyed getting out in the garage and building it. Don't tell my wife that because she's going to add more projects to my to-do list. I'm new to YouTube, so if you would consider subscribing, I would really appreciate it. I have several more videos of projects on the way, and I can't wait to share them with you. Thanks for watching.